To prevent the spread of communism, President Kennedy sent military advisors and other military aid to South Vietnam. As our support grew, it turned into direct involvement, and America was drawn into war. As the war drew on, American support for the war diminished. They thought the war was protecting big businesses' interests and those of the power elite. In addition, people didn't trust the government and felt they were overbearing and not looking after the interests of the American people. While it was commonly thought that the draft supplied most of our troops, 80% of them were volunteers. Many who were drafted tried to avoid the war any way possible. Some ran off to Canada. Some even had their doctor vouch for them, saying that they were unable to go in some way. In 1961, the United States had 3,200 military advisors in Vietnam. The American people didn't understand why we were fighting a war that was 8,500 miles away. As our presence rapidly grew, so did our unrest, and protests and even riots became more common. With America's military history, strength, and even the use of controversial tactics such as napalm, our military leaders thought the war would be short. However, it didn't go as we expected. We underestimated the ability of those we were fighting against. In World War II, the terrain was very different from Vietnam, which was mostly jungle. The Vietnamese soldiers camouflaged well in the surroundings, waiting for a surprise attack. The Vietnam War was the first war to have live video feed. Also, Vietnamese soldiers dug tunnels that they lived in and hid. They laid traps for any unlucky American soldier who happened to search it. These tunnels became very effective for the northern Vietnamese. Some tunnel systems extended for miles and allowed them to conduct surprise attacks. These tunnels were eventually used to store supplies and provide space for hospitals. This made it difficult for the Americans to find them. Operation Frequent Wind was an operation to evacuate all the Americans and as many South Vietnamese as possible. 1,373 Americans were evacuated in 24 hours. 5,595 South Vietnamese were evacuated. But many were left behind.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
The 1960s was a decade of change for the U.S., and the Vietnam War was a catalyst for the unrest. The Vietnam War is still one of the most controversial and polarizing wars in American history. Now, 40 years later, after the end of the war, America is still healing.
To thousands of mothers